Many organizations continue to rely on traditional metrics like attendance, desk time, and visible activity, because these are easy to observe and quantify. Yet, these measures often have little to do with actual output or the value employees deliver, especially in remote and hybrid environments. The result is a persistent mismatch between what gets measured and what really matters. In creative and technical fields, this gap is especially clear. Remote teams frequently report higher levels of innovation and deeper focus, but these gains rarely make it into formal evaluations. For example, research from Stanford shows remote knowledge workers spend more time on deep work, leading to measurable improvements in both quality and creativity. Despite this, performance reviews still tend to reward office presence or participation in scheduled meetings, rather than the tangible results of a project or campaign. The emphasis remains on what's visible to supervisors, not on the outcomes that drive business success. The consequences of this measurement problem are far-reaching. Employees quickly learn that being seen is often more important than what they accomplish. This leads to what some call productivity theater, workers putting energy into appearing busy or present, rather than focusing on meaningful tasks. In companies where badge swipes or logged hours are tracked more closely than project milestones, staff may prioritize visibility over results. The disconnect between management perceptions and employee contributions grows, especially when remote workers outperform, but remain less visible to decision-makers. This focus on easily measurable metrics can distort performance evaluations in every sector. In banking, for instance, remote loan processors may handle more applications with fewer errors, but their reviews still prioritize office attendance and cultural contributions. In consulting, hybrid workers might log more client-facing hours, yet deliver fewer actionable recommendations than their fully remote peers. These patterns repeat in law, healthcare, and engineering, where output and innovation are often overshadowed by subjective measures tied to physical presence or participation in office rituals. The reliance on outdated evaluation methods also undermines trust. Executives sometimes respond to the uncertainty of remote work by increasing surveillance and monitoring, hoping to ensure accountability. However, research shows that ramping up monitoring actually correlates with lower engagement and reduced motivation. When employees feel watched rather than trusted, their focus shifts from delivering results to managing perceptions. This cycle does little to improve true productivity and can erode morale over time. Generational differences further complicate the issue. Younger employees, who tend to thrive in remote settings and show higher productivity in structured, results-based environments, often face evaluation systems built for a different era. Performance reviews may still reward office behaviors that matter less in a digital-first world. As a result, high-performing remote workers are frequently overlooked for promotions or raises, even when their contributions are clear in the data. This perpetuates a system where advancement is tied to visibility, not value. Attempts to modernize performance management often fall short. Some companies introduce new output-based metrics, but these are frequently layered on top of old systems rather than replacing them. The result is a confusing mix of criteria that leaves both employees and managers dissatisfied. Without a fundamental shift toward measuring what truly drives business outcomes, organizations risk losing top talent and stifling innovation. The challenge is not just technical, it's cultural. Moving away from legacy metrics requires rethinking how work is defined, tracked, and rewarded. Companies that make this transition can better recognize and motivate their best performers, regardless of where or how they work. Those that cling to outdated measures, however, may find themselves missing out on the real benefits of flexible work models. While much attention is paid to the visible costs of office mandates, the hidden impact of flawed measurement systems is just as significant. Companies may overlook the real savings and performance gains that come from modernizing how they evaluate productivity, costs and benefits that rarely appear in official reports, but matter despite the attention paid to office utilization metrics and visible activity. The actual financial benefits of remote work are substantial and well documented. Companies like Dell have realized savings of around $11,000 per employee each year by reducing office space, utilities, and other overhead costs. These savings, confirmed by Harvard and Stanford research, are not unique to one company or industry. In fact, more than 80% of large firms have downsized their office footprints since 2020, But the details of these cost reductions rarely appear in shareholder communications or public filings. Instead, leadership often continues to highlight office attendance and physical presence, even as the balance sheets quietly reflect the benefits of a smaller real estate footprint. Turnover costs represent another area where remote work delivers clear financial gains. Buffer's data shows that remote workers are 41% less likely to resign than their in-office peers. This reduction in attrition translates to significant savings in recruitment, onboarding, and training, expenses that can add up quickly, especially in industries with specialized roles. Yet, these benefits are often buried within general HR budgets, with little direct attribution to remote work policies. The focus remains on what can be easily measured, such as badge swipes or occupancy rates, rather than the underlying improvements in retention and workforce stability. Productivity gains from remote and flexible work arrangements also go largely unreported in official financial statements. Studies from Stanford and other research groups consistently show that remote teams deliver more focused hours of deep work, leading to higher output and fewer mistakes. These improvements can equal thousands of dollars in additional value per employee each year, but they are rarely broken out in earnings presentations or investor calls. Instead, companies prioritize metrics that align with traditional office models, even when the data suggests that remote work is driving better results. Tax incentives and real estate obligations further complicate the picture. Many companies maintain office mandates not because they drive productivity, but because municipal tax breaks and long-term lease agreements make it financially convenient to keep seats filled. The immediate benefit of a tax credit or the avoidance of lease penalties often outweighs the less visible, but more substantial long-term savings that come from a remote or hybrid workforce. This dynamic leads to a situation where the true cost advantages of remote work are sidelined in favor of short-term financial incentives and legacy commitments. The lack of transparency around remote work savings is not always intentional. In some cases, companies may not fully understand the scope of the financial benefits, especially when savings are spread across multiple departments and line items. Overhead reductions, lower turnover, and improved productivity can be difficult to quantify in a system built around physical presence and office utilization. As a result, the real value of remote work remains hidden, both from shareholders and from employees who might otherwise advocate for more flexible policies. Investor priorities also influence what gets reported. With ESG frameworks now including physical capital utilization, companies feel pressure to show that their office space is being used efficiently. This can lead to selective reporting, where the narrative focuses on occupancy rates and office culture, while the financial upside of remote work is left out of the conversation. The result is a disconnect between what is actually happening on the ground and what is presented to the investment community. These patterns have real consequences for how companies compete for talent and structure their operations. As more organizations quietly benefit from remote work savings without publicizing them, the firms that embrace transparency and flexibility gain a competitive edge. The landscape is shifting, and the companies that recognize and act on the true financial advantages of remote work will be better positioned in the years ahead. This growing divide is beginning to reshape the dynamics of hiring and retention across industries. The coming talent war. The next front in corporate competition isn't just about products or profits. It's about who can attract and keep the best people. As the labor market tightens and skilled workers become more selective, the willingness to offer remote and hybrid roles has become a decisive advantage. Research shows that while remote and hybrid positions make up less than 15% of all job listings, they draw over half of all applications. The message from job seekers is clear. Flexibility is no longer a perk, but a baseline expectation. Companies that lean into remote work fill critical roles faster and with stronger candidates. Remote job postings attract nearly all of the application volume, while office-bound roles languish, often requiring longer searches and higher compensation just to compete. This shift is driven by more than just convenience. The vast majority of employees, 91%, say they would prefer to work fully or mostly remotely, and 83% find a hybrid schedule ideal. Flexibility around location is now one of the most important factors influencing where people choose to work, outpacing salary and title for many. The benefits go beyond hiring speed. Firms that embrace remote or hybrid models see higher satisfaction and retention. Employees value autonomy and work-life balance, and they're willing to trade off pay for it. More than half of professionals would accept a pay cut of 5% or more for location flexibility, with nearly a quarter willing to take a reduction of over 10%. For employers, this means access to a broader, more motivated talent pool without the need to outbid competitors on salary alone. Remote work also expands the reach of recruitment. Companies are no longer limited to candidates within commuting distance of their headquarters. Open roles draw applicants from across regions, time zones, and backgrounds, speeding up hiring and reducing the risk of skill shortages in specialized fields. This geographic flexibility is especially valuable in technical and creative sectors, where the best candidates may be scattered far from traditional industry hubs. Diversity and inclusion efforts benefit as well. When companies list roles as remote, applications from women increase by 15% and from underrepresented minorities by 33%. The option to work from anywhere opens doors for people with disabilities, caregivers, and those in rural or underserved areas, groups often excluded by rigid office requirements. Since the rise of remote work, labor force participation among people with disabilities has grown by 2 million in the US alone, a shift that would have been nearly impossible under old attendance models. Retention data reinforces the advantage. Companies with flexible work policies report lower turnover and higher employee loyalty. Workers who have the option to work remotely are more likely to stay, reducing the steep costs of recruiting, onboarding, and training new staff. In contrast, firms that maintain strict office mandates face higher attrition, slower hiring, and greater difficulty attracting specialized talent. This is especially pronounced in sectors like finance, healthcare, and engineering, where remote-friendly organizations now outpace their competitors in both hiring velocity and workforce stability. Generational preferences add another layer. Younger workers, especially Gen Z, overwhelmingly favor remote or mostly remote roles. Companies that fail to adapt see higher turnover among early career staff, while those that offer flexibility build a pipeline of future leaders. The competition for talent is no longer just about immediate needs, but about shaping the workforce for years to come. The implications are clear. Remote and hybrid work are now central to talent strategy. Companies that resist this shift will find themselves left with a shrinking share of the available workforce, forced to pay more for less satisfied employees. Those that recognize the new reality can hire better people, faster, and at lower cost, gaining a structural edge that office-bound rivals struggle to match. But while the workforce moves toward flexibility and autonomy, decisions about office mandates are still shaped by a very different set of priorities at the top. The gap between what employees want and what executives enforce is not just a matter of policy, but of power, and it's here that the next chapter of the workplace story unfolds. The power dynamics. Inside most companies, decisions about where and how people work are shaped by a small group at the top. These leaders, often insulated by private offices and short commutes, set policies that affect thousands of employees who face long journeys, crowded workspaces, and little control over their environment. The result is a clear power imbalance. Those who benefit most from office perks are the ones most likely to enforce return-to-office mandates, while the majority of employees carry the daily costs. Surveys reveal a stark divide in preferences. Executives are twice as likely as employees to believe in the value of in-person work, and their negative perceptions of remote work drive much of the policy. For many leaders, the office represents more than just a place to work. It's a symbol of status and control. Private offices, reserved parking, and access to exclusive amenities reinforce a hierarchy that is rarely questioned at the top, but felt acutely by those lower down. When policies are crafted, these privileges remain protected, while the broader workforce faces stricter rules and less flexibility. Double standards are common. At some global banks, executives retain the option to work remotely or set their own schedules, while junior staff must badge in daily and share open-plan desks. In the tech sector, senior leaders often maintain access to private spaces and flexible arrangements, even as the majority of employees are required to follow rigid schedules and hot desking policies. These patterns persist despite clear evidence that senior leaders spend most of their time in virtual meetings, regardless of location. The generational divide deepens these dynamics. Senior managers, especially those who built their careers in traditional office environments, tend to value face-to-face interaction and physical presence more than younger employees. This preference shapes policy, with older executives more likely to mandate in-person attendance, even as their own roles require less time in the office. For many, the office is not just a practical space, but a stage for rituals and routines that have defined their professional lives. The skills that help them advance, like reading a room or making connections in hallways, are less relevant in remote settings, leading to resistance against change. Financial pressures play a role as well. After stock price declines, many companies tighten office policies, hoping that increased visibility and collaboration will boost productivity and improve the bottom line. Yet, these decisions are often made by leaders who are least affected by the inconvenience of commuting or the realities of open-plan layouts. The push to fill office space can also serve as a quiet strategy for reducing headcount. By making in-person attendance mandatory, companies know that some employees will choose to leave rather than comply, achieving cost cuts without the negative headlines of layoffs. The structure of these decisions remains top-down. Most return-to-office policies are set by executives and enforced by middle managers, whose own advancement often depends on visible compliance rather than team performance. Managers may schedule unnecessary meetings or emphasize attendance to signal alignment with leadership, even when it adds little value to the work itself. This focus on presence over output keeps traditional hierarchies intact and discourages innovation from below. The physical workspace itself becomes a marker of power. Private offices, executive floors, and exclusive amenities are maintained, while most employees adapt to shared desks and crowded environments. The justification is often framed in terms of collaboration or culture, but the real effect is to reinforce existing status differences. Even wellness and flexibility benefits follow these lines, with top leaders retaining access to resources unavailable to most staff.